All right. Welcome to Millstone Self-Reliance Group. We are your hosts. I'm Mark over
And
there.
I'm Blake.
Blake. Hey, thanks for joining us. If you're watching this live, as always, takes a couple minutes for everything to kind of catch up. And so just a little bit of housekeeping. I'm just going to throw myself under the bus. If I sound not as normal or whatever, it's because I'm smoked, I'm in pain, and it's been a day and it's not over. But that's not an excuse, and we want to be here. And because, as Blake and I said, we kind of put we did the first 72 hours, and we talked about that and did some training. We've got a couple other things in the queue, but for right now, from now until the election, our intent was to use these live streams to talk more about current events as a way to highlight what's going on. Again, take whatever scenario. And so there's just been a couple things when going back to the first 72, Blake, we had that, and we talked about it last week, and I think I was off by a day or two, but we had a massive solar ejection, right? So we had two of those. We've had those events. I'm still big on this League of Shadows scenario, and I think that's what we got going on right now. So before I do my little diatribe and tell everybody what I think's been going on since our last live stream, I'm going to turn it over to you and get your thoughts and commentary on that before we go.
Well, I mean, kind of like I've been saying in general, it does seem like right now more and more events happen at a more rapid pace. So, the solar flare thing is a very interesting one. It was, I believe, an X7. We talked a little bit about what was predicted last week. It did end up being one heck of a show. I mean, I heard that they saw it as far south as Texas again, which, this wasn't really a common thing that I can remember when I was younger, getting this frequency of large solar storms. Now, still nothing in the holy crap, hit the alarm bells sort of level, but it is something to keep in consideration. We did see some disruptions with some satellites, some disruption in communications, things like that. So it's one of those things that's ever present in the back of the mind, is while we have the threat of a global conflict unfolding in front of us, while we have the economic crash that's unfolding in front of us, we also have the very real chance that something natural can take out all of our systems of complexity and buckle us and bring us to our knees right away. So it's one of those things to kind of always keep in the back of the head is if that happens, what do you do? And I mean, that's kind of what we talk about here, I suppose. So,
well, let me just throw this right back at you then. So if we, kind of don't have to have a format, but just jumping into it. So most people don't remember, just even 3 weeks ago, we had that huge Verizon crash. You can take it even a little bit farther back. There's been, massive, infiltrations within social media. A lot of it has to do with, data, but we did just have Verizon, and if take a step even farther back, here's, League of Shadows, your government for the first time ever saying, oh yeah, you might not be able to vote, or votes might not, votes aren't going to be able to be counted in a day because we've got all this information that says bad actors are going to try to mess with our voting system. Well, you can't tell us in one breath, if, a few years ago that our voting system what's the word I'm looking for? It's beyond reproach, right? It's good to go. Yeah. But then now before this election, suddenly it's like, well, there's some shit that could go on, because then you got the Verizon thing. Was that a warning? I'm again, just go back even a month or two before that. There was another major cyber attack. And then just where I'm going with this, Blake, is, on the CME or the coronal side, no one's talking. So no one's talking about the Verizon from even 3 weeks ago. Then we had a cyber attack on one of our water filtration hubs and nubs. You got FBI and CISA coming out and saying, oh yeah, your elections might be compromised. You kind of see where I'm going with this. So whether that's natural, man-made, and they know something and they're warning about it, or they're using it as an excuse to prep the battlefield. Because at the end of the day, if you just get people to accept it or think this is the norm and this is what's going to happen, so then when it happens, whether it was, live or Memorex, it almost doesn't matter. You've accomplished your goals.
Well, and like we talked about a couple weeks ago with, if there's a battlefield to be fought, there will be a battle fought on it. And one of the things about that is if you look at these electronic systems that control our entire world now, whether it's water purification to power management to general security for office buildings to this, that, or the other, we've relocated a lot of machinery to take on these tasks. And oh man, it's been a while ago, and I'm not going to remember the exact event, but I want to say, Mark, maybe you might remember 2017-ish. There was a hack of a power system or a nuclear power plant in I believe it was in Europe somewhere, maybe in the Baltics. And it was, if I remember correctly, they were able to take over the power control system, and they threatened to overheat the cooling towers or something along those lines. But it just shows that there are multiple different ways to bring down systems, and can be done by somebody from a very remote location with, I mean, yes, an extreme understanding of how these things work, but there are ways and backdoors into a lot of things. And we've become very vulnerable because of this. So it is an ever looming threat. I mean, I even believe that Klaus Schwab said that the next pandemic will be a cyber pandemic. And then that begs the question, well, what is a cyber pandemic? What could this lead to? And we are all very, very dependent on technology anymore.
Well, and then that kind of goes back to what we talked about last week, and the Hillary Clinton, Klaus Schwab, the Center for Economic, that's escaped me real quickly, but World Economic Forum, Center. Anyway, but these organizations, who keep talking about, just to your point, who keep talking about, well, we need to control this and we need to be in charge of it because everybody's so reliant upon this. So social media is where I'm going. It's the same type of event. You're setting up the stage and the conditions. So if something does ever happen, you can claim, see, it was those guys, and therefore we need to have complete control. And the moment that happens, which I think is one of the League of Shadows moves right now, is to be able to control that, whether it's by hook or crook. Because if they can control this, well, they can control everything. I mean, there is, and that's why really, when I said last week, and I'll shut up, I took Hillary Clinton at face value. She said it's a threat and we have to get this under control. What she didn't, so she wasn't lying. It's just how she said her words, so people think she's talking about us, America. No. It's her, the ruling class. Again, the Klaus Schwab, who's the other real George Soros. It's that group writ large. And then look at what's going on with radio stations right now, periodicals. I mean, if you think there's an actual media in America outside of alt media, again, I've got a bridge to nowhere to sell you. It's out of control. It's so obvious how corrupt and who really owns that, and how that's a tool that's being used against the people in America, or the people in the West, or the people in the world writ large.
Well, and that's like, you brought up George Soros, and then you brought up, radio stations and such. I think he's trying to buy, was it 2,000 radio stations?
3,000.
Yeah, it's an
3,000.
Yeah, it's a ludicrous number of communication. And to that point, it's, if you can control all the voices, I think is always the theory, you can control the minds. I mean, and if you look at humans as a programmable creature, where if you say something enough over and over and over again, eventually sometimes a lot of people just go, okay, and they'll acquiesce. And that is a concern when you start seeing which I don't think free press, the quote unquote free press, has existed for a very long time in the West in general, really in the world in general now. But that's long dead. And the problem is that there are such a small percentage of people that are going to go out and look for an alternative source or go do their own research. And oh boy, these are both very forbidden, verboten topics to even bring up. Do your own research was a bad word for how long in the West, So it's that mind control and thought crime sort of situation that we're starting to see metastasize, but very slowly. It's just starting to form.
Well, I would kind of argue a little bit. I think it's metastasizing, it's solidifying very quickly, because what you just said, before you would be applauded, lauded, congratulated, promoted if you went out and did your own research and you had your theory or your opinion was based on stuff you could point to. You could actually like, no, according to this and according to that, you know, now to your point, and you look how, so it's funny you just mentioned that. I was reflecting upon this yesterday. Look how quickly evil, the League of Shadows, was able to convince so many people to go along with the program. And if somebody was out there doing their own research, remember that was the catch. Oh, don't tell me you're doing your own research. Like that was suddenly like a negative or a bad, a pejorative. Like, oh, I did my own research. Oh my God, you tinfoil hat person.
That was another one. Trust the experts, you know, and it's just this blind trust in a position of authority. It's not a world I want to live in. I don't think it's a world anyone wants to live in, but it's the world that is starting to come to pass right now.
Well, let me just ask you that, because we'll have DB on here hopefully in a couple of minutes. But before DB punts in, you know that this is a world you don't want to live in, and it's you know back to your comment, it's starting to metastasize. Look at where we are right now, and so again, people can say, "Mark, you're just full of shit." Okay, that's true. Present a cogent argument that proves I'm full of shit. My argument is quite simple. It's been a couple of weeks now since Helene, and no one is talking about this. The mainstream media is still to this day ignoring it, not talking about it, blaming it on everything other than taking responsibility. And they're doing everything they can to memory hole that, just like they've succeeded in memory holding C-19 and all the bullshit that went along with that, event. So Blake, you kind of see where I'm going with this. I mean, it's already happening right now.
Yeah,
and
man.
You're an evil person. Again, now we're hearing reports of armed roadblocks, preventing people. And, and I do have the FEMA helicopter video from last time we didn't play. We could play it now that they intentionally. Yeah. And North Carolina came out. Matter of fact, I do want to talk about that if we want to circle back around to, it was an inexperienced helicopter pilot, okay.
Yeah. And I actually, right before we went live on Twitter, I did find, because I couldn't find the original Twitter post of North Carolina apologizing about that, the National Guard, but I did post an article. But this is to the greater thing. So first off, what happened with Helene was terrible. I've watched a tremendous amount of people that are on the grounds footage now, just kind of on YouTube and some flyovers and stuff. And we are not being told the true extent of it, I think, because of how severe the problem is. It's a multi-generation time to fix what happened down there. I mean, it's messed up. And really with what we're seeing now, and I've heard that supposedly a second time another Black Hawk helicopter dusted another one of the supply sites that were in that region. Yeah. So, it begs the question, what's going on here? And like DB likes to talk about, and there's an argument for it, is it just straight up incompetence on every frigging level? But like, I would make the argument though as well as not, because rotor wash is a very important part of operating a helicopter, and you'd have to have an intimate understanding on how it works with the world if you're going to land that helicopter and that, hey, listen, flying over head of some people might blow some shit around. That should be pretty common sense for somebody that's operating one of these things. So
there are no inexperienced helicopter pilots. You're either a helicopter pilot or you're like a kick-ass pilot who's flying for 1/60th SOAR, the best of the best. But if you're a helicopter pilot, to your point, I'm making light of it, but yeah, okay. Hey, I just got my certification. Okay, someone say, yeah, you're inexperienced, but you know how to fly a helicopter. And to everything Blake just said, and I've been around helicopters since I was 17, jumping out of them, rappelling out of them, sling load operations. I mean, dude, I'm here to tell you, there is no such thing as these guys didn't know what they were doing, to Blake's point. Like, no, that's not how that works, man. And if you've got a certification to fly one of those things, especially in the military, a UH-60, you understand all of this, the mathematics, the science, the environmental, every bit of it. So yeah, no, don't try to fill me full of that bullshit. Oh, it was a rookie. So you put your rookie, the brand new guy, he's the only guy you had to fly the helicopter that day? Is that what you're trying to, because so even when you say it that way, it's still bad. It's still bad. It's like, then why was that guy fucking piloting the helicopter? Period.
It just doesn't have.
Goddamn humanitarian, rescue missions. You're going to be flying napid the earth, maybe trying to land in an unregistered or a non-improved HLZ, helicopter landing zone. You don't want the novice. Hey, I just got my stuff out of a Cracker Jack box yesterday. You wouldn't have that guy flying those type of missions. Now these guys, they knew what the hell they were doing. Is all I'm trying to say. DB, do you want to come in on that note? I see it down there. You're kind of looking all like, I'm serious. What do I want to do here? You're coming on. I'm bringing you to the stage. Hey, everybody. You recognize him. You've seen him here before. DB, good friend, great man. He's also the author of The Capitalist Caliphate. I think we've told that story once or twice before. That was a great road trip DB and I had. People trying to kill us and shit. And so you just come up with funny things, hanging out and having tea with terrorists. And then they're so surprised that you were there. That's the only reason. See, again, Blake, now that's inexperienced right there. That's I was caught off guard, not you mean this helicopter creates rotor wash and that creates a downdraft? Yeah, no, it's not how that shit works, bro.
They were surprised to see us as we were surprised they didn't kill us. So.
Yeah. Just like that helicopter was surprised. That's what would happen if he went into a hover above all of those structures and those supplies. Oh my God, I'm going to blow it all away. Yeah, dude, that's exactly what'll happen. So DB, how the hell are you doing tonight, sir?
Living the dream, guys. I can't complain. Just finished a week of fall break for the kids. So they're back to school tomorrow and
I bet you're ready for that.
A little bit. It hasn't been horrible, but there's a rhythm to the school, to the the schedule just works. It works for everybody, and when there's no schedule, it's like a little bit of chaos.
Yeah,
which I like.
Well, you got to have a little something like that in our lives that keeps us on our toes and keeps your brain actively thinking. So I don't know if you heard. You didn't really pop in. Blake and I were already kind of having a conversation. You heard the end, we were just kind of making light of that. Oh, we made a mistake. It was an inexperienced pilot. We're still kind of like, recapping last week's episode and then kind of talking about some current events that are taking place right now, which in my humble opinion, when I go into my side, I think are clearly dots on a wall that indicate, again, the League of Shadow scenario is looking to me more and more likely the scenario that we're in and the one to be prepared for. But DB, you got anything in particular where you want to start off with or anything that you want to say to folks right now?
I mean, for the most part, I only caught a little bit about what you guys were talking about, but I obviously figured out exactly the situation that you guys were referencing with the helicopter flying over the supplies and all that. Just classic, right? Like these dudes don't want anybody to help. Anytime anybody private in, dare I say, like a church, because that used to be where all the help came from, right? Churches and community places, and now that they're a little bit more private, the government still is not interested. So,
Well,
Blake?
Yeah, I was going to say, I think that's a really interesting thing and actually probably merits a longer conversation, but why is it that the government doesn't like when they have competition and helping their people? Like when the people start bootstrapping themselves and helping each other. Why is it that because it is a story as old as time. Why do they stick their fingers in those places? It's more of a general question, but it's an interesting answer. I don't really have a really good answer other than they hate us and they want us dead. But
see, I'm on the side of it's control. It's bureaucrats who have power, and this is their opportunity to control others or tell others to F off. That's really where I see this. We saw it in the agency. We called them headquarters. The folks who called all the shots back in Washington, but it was the same thing. It was all about control. They weren't on the ground. They didn't care. They just wanted to control the people who were.
Crabs in a bucket, man.
Well, let me just throw this in there though for you guys right there. I mean, you're not wrong. I don't disagree with your guys' comments that, a lot of it is just that bureaucratic essence, I've got to justify my, GS-15 or my SIS-1 position back in Langley, and all the perks and everything that goes with it. I've got to justify this. And I haven't been in the field in years. So, and I'm sure that's the same in the military. I'm sure that's the same in any government entity organization. Clearly that's the case. We can see within the IRS, the FBI, the DOJ, FEMA, to what we're talking about. So, but I think that is, I think that's indicative though of a larger problem, which is government. And so, David, this is where, you and I even did this the last time. I agree, but I disagree. I think there is a larger malfeasance here. But, but that is it. Like, oh, but if somebody shows us up, then I can't, it's harder for me to justify my existence. But I also think it's intentional how we've created our own apparatchik, our own set of individuals who work for the government and are, and by default, because they work for the government, they consider themselves, because they are treated and paid as though they're another class of citizens. They're a higher class of citizens. I think, David, I just saw you nodding your head. You want to elaborate, and then we'll come up to Blake.
Last week, you guys referenced the bureaucrats as the aristocracy, and I thought that was such a vivid image of what they actually believe. We have good patriots inside there, but they're the minority. The rest of them are, they're aristocrats and people who truly believe they're better than others.
And they're unelected. So Blake, I don't know where you want to go, but the vast majority, to what David and I are talking about right now. Look, I was employed by the CIA. David was employed by the CIA. There was people above us, and who making a shit ton of money. Not a single person is elected, and yet there were people who were making decisions contrary to what our elected officials were putting out as policy decisions. I've seen it. I personally witnessed it 2 times in my experience. I know of a handful of other times, but I personally. Well, that's not what the president said. Well, that's what you're going to fucking do. So I don't know if David, I should give you a chance, but maybe let Blake, and then think about your response to that if you want to add something there. Blake?
Yeah, well, I mean, as a private citizen who's never been in government before, that scares the hell out of me. And then that's always been kind of one of my general concerns and distrusts with the government in general is, they have these unelected individuals who can kind of just go, yeah, that's how it works. And it's obviously a huge problem. It's the kind of thing that brought down empires for ages. I mean, Byzantine bureaucracy exists as a term for a reason, and that's the thing is it's one of the later stage of empire signs. When you have these huge class of aristocratic, unelected bureaucrat individuals who have usurped power in their own little fiefdoms, their own little corners of the government where, they've got maybe a couple thousand people that kind of answer under them or however many, it doesn't really matter, but that they can elicit their own control. And that's what leads to this factional fighting and that kind of stuff. And there's not really a good answer as to how to deal with something like a bloat like that. But it's definitely a very serious problem. No.
Hey, before we bring it over to you, DB, and Blake, and I apologize. This is going to maybe catch you a little bit from left field. We've talked about this in the past, but I didn't kind of tee this up tonight. But so internally, myself, Blake, DB, and a handful of other people who, either I've served with downrange, military agency, people who've been on the either here on Millstone or on Mission Critical, Redbeard, Blackbeard, BCP. So we are in our own private chat over on Telegram. And so Blake, we should talk offline and be able to announce this next time. So something that Blake just said, and the reason I bring this up is, so here in this private chat, and by the way, that form of communication seems like it's been compromised now, what they did to him, because government wants to control everything, to David's point, and looks like they may have actually compromised even Telegram now. But long story short, but if you just look at, so somebody had made a comment, we had this conversation going, and it goes into what Blake, you just said, talking about what our government really should doing. We should really be looking out for our society, our people, the health of our people, the mental health, the physical health, the financial well-being. But if you take a step back and if you're fair and honest with yourself, our government isn't doing any of that. So to your point, Blake, maybe you want to respond. We'll bring it to David. Tells us we're all stupid. But like, we don't even have a government that actually has the interest. And if you look at Helene, it sure as hell seems that way. And if you look at all the money going out and illegal immigrants, I mean, like, if you just look at all these other issues, it more and more is like, no, this is a government by, with, and through giant corporations. And that's not slamming rich people. This is like about control. This is BlackRock. This is that kind of stuff. That's what it appears to me, Blake.
Well, I mean, I would agree with that to an extent. Going back to the tech part of things, I think it's best to just assume that everything's compromised because it all comes from a corporation that's selling a product. When a product's free, guess what? You're the price.
Yeah.
So, I think it's best to just operate with hey, listen, it's all dirty somehow, one way or the other. They're getting something from it. And, so also with that in mind, like with what you're talking about with corporations, basically BlackRock and Vanguard. I mean, I just heard BlackRock just announced that they hit a new all-time cap for their investments at 11.5 trillion in holding in that one fund alone. And I mean, $11.5 trillion is in assets is a tremendous number. I mean, that's like one of those almost difficult to comprehend, just the volume of cash it would be if it was in one single location. I mean, we're talking about the kind of money that can literally overthrow not just third world nations, but like major players in the world. So, and to have that in the possession of one corporation, and there being multiple of these corporations that have very tied interests with the powers that be that are in the government system on both the left and the right now, it leads to a very strange, I don't know if the term plutocracy is quite right, but it leads to, technocracy. I mean, it is a very interesting thing that's unfolding.
Before I bring it over to you, just to your point, Blake, I agree completely. And I think this is done intentionally. I don't think people really understand what $11 trillion is.
Oh.
Like, we use this term, we throw it around, in terms of debt and GDP. But I have a hard time getting my head around it, and I'm not saying I'm the world's smartest guy, but I'm also not an idiot. Like, dude, that's an incomprehensible amount of wealth, of money. It just is.
Yeah.
DB, I've got 11 trillion in the back of my car right now.
My wife will spend it, I'm sure. She'll find a way. But one of the things I saw recently, it might have actually been in a political ad this week during the football games, was a politician spends like 80% of their time fundraising. And when they're spending all that time trying to obtain the money to continue to run for re-election perpetually, who do you think has the power? And it's those folks with the trillions of dollars, the billions of dollars, the millions of dollars. Somebody owns every politician in this country. And I think there's solutions to it. I mean, neither here nor there, but it just tells you what you do with that money. You don't have to go spend that money to overthrow the government. You could spend it to buy off people to control the government, which is even more fun if you're in that line of business,
League of Shadows. That's what I think is going on. I think they've been very successful at doing it because, just to your point, I just have to say this. If a politician is spending 80% of their time striving to be reelected, well, then the event or the action of being reelected has to be of great either moral, psychological, physical, or financial gain for that politician. Because why else would you and then how do you justify only spending 20% of your time? It actually begs the question, like, well, you're not even really doing anything for us then. If you're spending 20%, 1 out of 5 days actually trying to take care of the citizenry of your country, America in this case, and the other 4 to 5 days, you're hobnobbing, going on, fundraising junkets and otherwise trying to promote somebody else's corporate interests. you see what I'm kind of getting at? I don't think we should never allow, nor should we ever vote in to power people like that. Those aren't the people you want. I want somebody like, I want Blake or David, to kind of go to Cincinnatus, going back in some Roman culture. Now there's other examples too, but I want the guy who doesn't want the position, but the people wrote him in on the ballot. Nope, David. We want David for the job. David does it for 4 years, can never run for election. Maybe he can put his name in the hat the first time, but can never run for re-election. It's only if the people so believe in that individual that they write that person in. And then you can't punish them, with doing this for the rest of their life. Like all of these politicians, we have the Lindsey Grahams and the Mitch McConnells and the Nancy Pelosi's and the Joe Bidens. No, you get 8 years. And then honestly, and in all fairness, then we should let those people go back to being family members, mothers, fathers, sons, daughters, husband, wives, and getting back onto their lives. Because otherwise they're just going to get corrupted.
Yeah. Politics should not be a career. Period. You should not have a career in politics. That's just something that is disgusting about the very concept of that. What's more is, the simplest fix would be no lobbyists and term limits, but holy crap, they will probably just take the football and push the big red button and end everything if we ever tried to actually get that thing done. Because, once power is given, rarely does it is it given back. And that's kind of, I think, the situation that we're in is we've got a bunch of jello brain geriatrics at the controls that don't want to give up power to the next generation. And even the next generation behind is foaming at the mouth and a bunch of crazy totalitarianists that want to continue the same thing.
So that's why I think we should consider how we're going to open this up to anybody who wants to be over on the Millstone, that chat, because that piece that Blackbeard wrote, those 4 little things, his comments, I think, again, you just said it and it really resonates with me. Like, we've got to take a step back and then just even reassess and reevaluate what's the purpose of this government. And this is maybe Blake, where we want to get Redbeard on again, somewhere in the near future, to just sit and talk about how far we've moved away from the Constitution and states' rights.
Yeah, I would be all about that, because that's really, if we're looking at it from that quintessential American viewpoint, it's imperative to know how to be a good citizen, how to be a true citizen for a republic, and what that means, and how we go about building with this good civic duty. It was one of the biggest things that ever happened in the public school system that was detrimental to this nation as a whole was when we removed civics from school. How can you have good citizens if they aren't taught the basics of what our fundamental system is, the way in which we operate, the founding documents, and the principles behind those documents? It's kind of like the idea of eliminate the language, so you can't even pose the question because you don't have the words to even think in that mindset. Well, it's kind of the same thing when you strip away our understanding of what we are as a nation.
DB?
One thing Nevada does, it's on topic, but a little bit different, is we elect our representatives, even though we're very good at electing, really awful ones. But every 2 years, they serve January through April or whatever it is. It's our legislative term is 120 days, and that term is for 2 years. And of course, the governor could call them back if something pressing or whatever. But they have 120 days after elected to get stuff done, to get bills passed, to wreck, in my opinion, to wreck the state. They have only 120 days to do their best or worst. And for the remainder of their 2-year term, they do absolutely nothing. They go back to their real lives. They go back to their careers and jobs. And that concept seems awesome. We don't technically have career politicians in the same way. I'm talking at the state level. I'm probably a little idealistic on how it works. But I love the idea that these guys come, they work, they do what they promised they were going to do. If they can't get it done in 120 days, then they got to wait another year and a half until the next term starts and go again. And I think that's a pretty cool idea where you don't have these dudes living off the government dollar for 2 years, fundraising the entire time. I'm sure they do all that. I'm sure behind the scenes they're still playing the game at a high level, but the idea alone is we don't need people making laws constantly. We don't need them overpowering us constantly. I think it's probably one of the only systems in the US that's like that. I don't know for sure, but it's unique. That I do know.
That is unique. Well, and that's the thing, is government bloat is a huge problem. I mean, we've seen, like we're talking about just with the career politicians and that kind of stuff, but we have so much that doesn't need to be handled by the federal or the state government that is now handled exclusively by the federal and the state government. Road systems are kind of arguably one of the few things that should be maintained. But then the question is how should they be maintained? A military, yes, and some education. But now we're seeing these programs that just it's every single facet of our life. It's holy crap. If I want to put a freaking light up outside on a post for my garden, I got to go through like 3 different councils to do that. And I'm in the county, and it's obviously it's because I want to go a little bigger than I should be able to. It's more of like a spotlight, but that's beside the point. It's like
your property.
What was that?
It's your property. Who cares?
Yeah, and that's just it. But it's not, and it's not that they give a crap about you putting up that thing. It's that they want their cut. They got their hand out. Every little aspect is more. We're going to fleece you for every single thing we possibly can fleece you for. Oh.
Well, I think that is, again, going back to what we were just saying, that's a telltale sign of how just horrible our government at the local, state, and federal level has become. It's a self-licking, self-perpetuating lie, self-licking ice cream cone, however you want to say it. It's like, well, I've got to justify my existence. How about this? How about you go out and get a different job because we don't really need you? Like, we can do this. And going it back to Helene and League of Shadows and then back into Control, I think that's what we're trying to see. So maybe setting David up for, what he loves talking about, just because government's stupid. So maybe at some level, that's really what it is. Whereas, I might think it's at a higher level of nefarious and malign intention, but it could just simply be to what you guys both just talking about. We've just got a bunch of bureaucrats who get paid way too much money, who don't ever want to give up their positions, and their positions are contingent on controlling you. And that's what we got going on right now. But if that is true, boys, before you answer, then we're really fucked. I mean, we're in big trouble because that attitude is selfish and it's self-centered. And that is one that's always doomed to fail. History has shown us time and time again.
So I was thinking about, we were talking about the weather changing, and I kind of took the position of, man, our government has to have some level of competence to pull off something last week. But I was thinking, like, why though would, like, you look back to Area 51, Roswell, why didn't the government push harder to be like, you guys, there's no aliens, man. Like, this is what's really going on. Because the lie or the conspiracy or the story helped them. Like, you're looking this way while we're doing things over here.
Yeah.
And that's what I feel like is going on with the weather control conversation. It's what's really going on. You looked at the storm that hit Florida. It wasn't this category 20 monstrosity that was going to wipe Florida off the face of the earth like the media was saying. It hit land at category 3, which is still bad. I get it, but that's not the narrative. And the government was okay letting everybody go one direction with the weather control thing. They're like, oh man, they don't really know what we're up to. We're up to pushing this narrative that this is going to be just a horrible disaster, climate change, let's tax more of the poor people, etc. And I think that's really what's going on. It's just like the aliens thing. They're just sitting on their hands saying, hey, they're busy with this bullshit. We're going to keep doing this stuff over here. And the media is the accomplice on this one,
So I would definitely agree that that serves a very, very useful point. I mean, the distractions. It's as old as time. It's the bread and games. It's the circus. It's that
Yes.
tiny little baubles to pay attention to. Now, as to play the devil's advocate thing, Operation Popeye in Vietnam was totally a real thing. Like, so we do have examples where it is a legitimate thing where we've been manipulating the weather. But the thing is it takes a massive amount of human interaction as of right now, to our understanding, to do these sorts of things. So is it plausible? Yes. Is it worth having a conversation about? I would say yes, because I enjoy those kinds of conversations. But from the perspective of the powers that be, just the shiny bauble distraction is a very, very useful tool.
So here in Nevada, they actually do weather control. They take something up, I think it's like called silver nitrate.
Silver, yeah, I think you might be right with that, actually.
It's
Iodine.
smarter people than me know all about this stuff, but they actually do this here in Nevada because we're in the desert. We're overpopulated in the desert with no water. There is some, I don't fully understand the purpose or the intent, but what they do is a well-known thing. It's done at the Desert Research Institute that's about 20 minutes up the road this way. And like it's a real thing, and I get that. So it's one of those balancing what can they actually pull off versus what do they want us to believe they could pull off versus what the hell's actually happening.
Well, for whatever reason, we've gone past an era or we've gone into a new era. And this kind of goes into two comments that John just kind of made. Well, now a third. He's saying, excuse me, what can we do to wake people up? Everyone that lives in the city thinks that the government's going to take care of them, feed them. Weather control, if we know how is China doing? Well, so this is right there. That's where I kind of want to end at, because to your point, DB. So, I mean, we've got Middle Eastern countries that are doing this. China's doing it. And this isn't hidden. This is all public source information. Our job isn't to be here to be, we're not trying to be a podcast like that. But go look it up. I mean, and there's others, big, huge podcasts and, big brains that have talked about this as well. This has been going on. A lot of people recently with the weather control kind of referenced the late 40s, early 50s. It's actually much older than that. But if you want to take it into the modern era, yeah, that's when big business and government really started messing with it. China just did it during the Olympics. I think it's Dubai. Don't quote me on this, but it was either Dubai or Qatar. They just did it and they fucked it up so bad. They flooded half of their town. Blake just mentioned Operation Popeye. There's other operations here in the States where when they were testing this, they messed up and they directed it over a landfall where they didn't want, again, go do your own research, and people died. So to, both of your points, what is really going on? I don't really know, but we've got a government and unelected bureaucrats who are out of control, just like the IRS. I mean, just like the DOJ, just like DB, just like the people you and I, unfortunately used to, share a computer system with, in our previous life, so yeah. And lots of those people never left like you and I did, right? You just think about that. You and I said, that's it, fun meter, F you, I'm out of here. This is wrong. How many of those people are still there? And what are they willing to do now?
Oh, yeah. And it's crazy. And the only thing that's truly being accomplished is fear. People are starting to be afraid of everything, right? And that's what the government wants, because you get control through that fear. And that's the narrative that we're just keep seeing. It's everywhere. Fear, fear, fear. Fear for this. And then guess who's here to help? The government.
And that's, I think, a big thing is they want to be the solution to it, but they're walking a razor's edge by doing that, because a certain amount of fear in the concept of total control and manipulation is good. It's useful. But too much fear, humans are herd animals, man, and you'll get a stampede. And if we truly stampede, they can't control that too. So it's a fine edge.
I think that's a great point, and I think we are seeing that starting to metastasize or solidify or become, being brought into the light. I don't think it's, so Bongino, people say Bongino, is it painful enough? Blake and DB, they'll know. I was saying this like 4 years ago, not saying I'm better than Bongino. I don't mean it that way. I'm sure there's a lot of people who are talking about, like, my thing was like, people haven't been punched in the face by Mike Tyson enough times yet to really start waking up. And so to your guys' point, I think that is starting to happen. Like, like, oh shit, Mike Tyson still got a lot of power. That really hurt. And so you get some people are starting to wake up. And then just to your guys' point, and if people start waking up, those who are trying to control things become even more fearful, more desperate. And what are they willing to try to accomplish? So whether it's to DB's point, hey, you guys keep thinking about UFOs while I'm really doing something else over here. Well, the more people are starting to warm up to that, this is the UFO thing you guys were doing was bullshit. What are you really up to? Well, that's causing fear. And then what does fear do? It induces panic. And I think we're starting to see some of that stuff at the national and the international level right now. And this last week, I hate to say it, final comment, I friggin' hate throwing dots on the wall because they keep starting to paint. They're all painting the same picture. I want to be wrong. I don't want to be right. And I keep coming closer to being right with each passing day.
Hey, I'm optimistic. I have faith, and my strongest evidence for believing that we're actually on the right path, that people are waking up, that people are listening. And this is probably going to piss off whoever's listening, but Trump, in my opinion, is not the greatest dude for us. What he's saying works. The ideas, what I get it. But the fact that so many people are able to overlook his serious flaws tells you they are waking up and so pissed off at what the far left is doing that they could overlook his flaws and say, you know what, I could deal with this. I could deal with this guy because what he's going to do is at least going in the right direction. Whether somebody could run with that torch or not, I don't know. But it gives me optimism that, like, when I look at it and I listen objectively, I'm like, how is this race even close? In a different world, Trump would be getting smoked because he's unconventional. He's not been a moral person. He's had all these things that would generally disqualify him, but it's still a very close election because people are like, you know what? That stuff is minor compared to how bad things are going to get the other way. So maybe it's a little naive, maybe it's a little crazy, but it gives me optimism that there's enough people waking up to the bullshit. I just hope it's not too late. Right? Does that make sense without offending every pro-Trump dude ever?
Well, no, but so if you're a pro-Trump dude, I mean, like, that shouldn't mean you idolize. I mean, like, I know there's people who see, I actually think, David, to the other side of the coin you're talking about, because I agree with you. Donald Trump's not a Republican. Like, what the fuck are we talking about? He's not a conservative. He made, he did some good things in his first administration. He did some bad things. But to me, it's pretty obvious, and I'm not even using like the South Park, what was their thing? Which, by the way, was
a sandwich and a giant douche.
And dude, that was like some of their best episodes. Their whole Bruce Jenner character, holy fucking shit! What was the what was the teacher's name? Not Mackey. Garrison, Mr. Garrison. Garrison, that was such a great little run for, but anyway, that was a great run for South Park. But back to David's point, we're at that point where it's not even a turd sandwich and a giant douche. Like, you hate Trump so much, you're gonna cut off your nose to spite your face, because this hasn't been going very well.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, whether you go back to the Obama era, like, everybody's already forgotten about how horrible Obama era economics was. The housing market, food, gas, da. But to Blake's point, and well, I should shut up, Blake, you can speak for yourself. In my opinion, but this is how we've been indoctrinated and we have been propagandized over the last like 12 years of life. And maybe those watching this live or watching it on demand and, us talking, it's not the same for us, but there's a whole new generation that's grown up under this propaganda and sees the world differently and doesn't remember or even think about any of that stuff. And when confronted with the facts, would still just respond emotionally and like, yeah, but Orange Man bad. And I'll shut up, yield the floor.
Well, okay. So You know, I'm kind of in the same boat with you, DB, as far as the whole Trump thing goes. He's obviously an ass, but he's, in my lifetime, the best option that we've been able to see. You know,
And the DB's point, though, just the DB's point, that's a sad statement, but it's true.
But it's the truth.
But sad. Yeah, but it is true.
Like Gene said, you know, I'd rather pick the lesser of two evils in this case. You know, do I want to go out and, you know, have Trump over and break bread with him, with my family? No, probably not. But is he the guy that I will? I don't know if I want to.
Come on, man. That would be funny as shit.
Right. That maybe at the bar with a beer, maybe. Yeah. All right. But not like with my family breaking bread. But anyway, you know, the thing is really simple for me. It's no new wars. Keep out of the interventionist. You know, try to stronger economy, give us more money, less taxes, and quite frankly, if he can get her done, it's the try to turn off the tap on the immigration. You know, and go ahead.
And I'm going to say my point is less with Trump or not Trump. It's more what gives me faith that
it's that
we actually are putting up a fight still, that we haven't given up, that enough people are going to it's almost not even a lesser of two evils. It's this is extremely bad, and this at least is going to get us, keep us on the track somewhat. And it's amazing that half our country could overlook what would be typically disqualifying factors and say, you know, F it, this is how we're going to go because we have to save this country. Enough people believe it that this is a close election.
Yeah.
We just need to win over the rest of them if they're not already so far gone, which.
And I don't think I was going to say, I don't think they could necessarily anyone's too far gone per se. I do think, like you're talking about the propaganda, it gets tough. There's some people that are, and I know them personally, that are really locked in, that just do not buy anything anybody tells them that doesn't come from, you know, the mainstream media that's been fact checked and told by the experts and this, that, and the other thing. And you know, that's a concern, but you're right to be hopeful, because I think people with Trump, you know, definitely the first time it was kind of like flipping the bird at the powers that be, that we were sick and tired of it. And then, you know, the second time, there was some crazy things that happened there that we don't need to go down into too great a detail because we'll be here talking for a while. And this time now it's a very different thing. And it does seem, I mean, if you can believe polling, which is all very relative, but the independent numbers are very strong with Trump right now, because I think a lot of those people that are on the fence are like, man, this is bad. This is getting real serious. And it looks like at least maybe here's a chance to get out of it, or at least keep our nose above water. And boy, that means we're in some pretty dire straits when that's the way, when a lot of people are thinking. Even 49% of the country thinks that way. So,
DB, if I can, and we're coming up on an hour. And DB, I don't know how much more time you have. How much more time do you have, sir?
Probably 20 minutes.
Okay.
Depends when my kid runs to the car. So,
okay. So let's just kind of maybe start moving it in the direction of wrapping up. But to Blake, your point, because I think DB will add to this. You know, again, and I loved your analogy. Trump winning was the big double-barreled middle finger to the elite class, the politician class, you know, all of that. And, you know, look, he fucked some things up, in my opinion, during his presidency, and he got a lot of things right. And, you know, to DB's point, you know, I personally would love to sit and break bread with the guy, because I think it would be fucking hilarious. And I just do. But to DB's point, you know, like, you know, or Blake's, maybe you just have a beer with the guy. But at the end of the day, for all of his faults and shortcomings, like, we all have those. I mean, like, you know, don't fool yourself. So somebody says, oh, Trump is so bad. As a matter of fact, you guys can back me up. DB, I know you and I talked about this during when Trump was running for election. There were so many people that DB and I knew from our previous life who were saying things on social media. I never responded, but DB and I had private conversations. I'm like, I remember at that one poker party, she was saying this kind of shit. That's way worse than what Trump did. You know, like, so putting that stuff aside, I love Blake's analogy. It was the double-barreled middle finger. And then now that, and I personally think the election was stolen. I'm not afraid to say it. I mean, I don't think Joe Biden won the most votes of any president in the history of presidents. There was just way too many shenanigans. There's too many irregularities. What you can call me a conspiracy theorist. I just think that's what happened. But now that, so some people just kind of, wanted to still think that we're free and we're a constitutional republic, a democracy, as they're lying to us. And, so you didn't really say anything because that's who most of us are. We don't want to get into a fight. But now you've just had 4 years of this. And I just heard somebody, and this is where I'll shut up. I just heard somebody yesterday, it was probably from a podcast last week. Somebody actually, the first time I've heard somebody say, we've been in a recession for 3 years. As a small business owner, no fucking shit. I've been talking about this since 2020. Like this recession isn't new. So I do think, to your guys' point, some people are starting to wake up and realize, hey, that other guy might be a little bit of a clown and a showman and, but holy effing shit, look where we are now. Blake and I were just talking about this milk, eggs, and bread the other day.
And I think people are waking up. The more it gets to your, like when war is on your doorstep, you start to you start to see the world a little bit less idealistically. And here in Reno at the university, there is this trend. Okay, so I'll try and summarize this as fast as I can. There is at the University of San Jose State University, there's a volleyball team, women's volleyball team that has a dude on it, right? Well, they're in our conference with the University of Nevada here, and our volleyball administration, not the school administration, said, we're not going to forfeit this game like everybody else. Our girls are going to play against this dude. And a week later, after everybody's up in arms, a week later, the volleyball team's like, the administration didn't talk to us. We're forfeiting this game. We took a vote. We're standing in solidarity, right? So here in Nevada, where I don't know if these social issues have been on our doorstep yet, but it's just an example of, hey, here it is. It's in our front yards. They're starting to fight. You're going to have, it's not just the crazies talking about being all this trans stuff going on. It's actually happening, and we're seeing it here in our own community. One of our high schools had a similar issue with a volleyball, like in Reno, Nevada. One of the high schools had the same exact situation with a man playing on, or a boy playing on the girls' volleyball team. And it's starting to become more prevalent that I think people are getting shocked a little bit and saying, oh, wow, that isn't just a conspiracy, or that isn't just a right-wing crazies talking. This is actually happening because it's now happening in our communities, and it's every single day. And that's just one issue. It could be when you fill up your gas tank or buy groceries. Like, I still don't see how people have not lost their absolute minds over the cost of everything. I'm very blessed. I'm not stressed over the cost of gas or eggs or whatever. But in the world I came from, that's a huge deal. Where we had to go to food pantries to get our community provided food for us because we couldn't afford anything, right? That's how things are right now. And I don't understand how people aren't rioting. It blows me away.
Hey, Blake, before you respond, I just want to point out, so JD John over here has made some good comments. I pulled them up on the screen. I don't know if everybody saw them, but one that he brought up that I want to, maybe this is a good place to circle back and end on, is he said, what about Diddy, or how about Diddy? So Blake, I don't know if you want to respond to DB's points right there, but I would like to end it on the Diddy. And then he just said, good prevails over evil. Well, we can lose battles, though. I mean, I think we will win the war, but we've obviously lost some battles to evil here. And DB just brought up some of them right there. But Blake, bringing it back to you. But boys, just don't let me get off topic. I think that's a great place to end this on, is on that whole P. Diddy, pedophilia, Jeffrey Epstein didn't kill himself, all that kind of shit. The killery, and all that. So
end on a topic that literally will take hours to even start to broach.
Well, we could just do, whatever.
All right, well, listen, I'll talk about one of the things that DB said, because I think it goes back to really what the main point of this channel is. And that's, again, on the food side, is it's become extremely expensive. It's getting harder to get your hands on quality. You know, and when you can get that quality, it's almost cost prohibitive. And how does that not lead to people rioting? Well, I think because we have these golden chains, it's a lot harder or a lot less likely for people to maybe go out and be really pissed off as long as they got their noodle cup and Call of Duty. You know, I think there's a lot of these stimulus that are going to keep them placated to a certain extent. Things have got to get really, really, really bad before we start seeing that. Now it's getting there in a lot of.
Well, no, if I can just add, because you made me think of something on a personal note, and again, and we'll figure this out for next week, maybe open it up, but I think we got to have some rules. But you'll see some of the conversations we have, and Blake and I talk all the time. Like, so, Blake has provided me with natural eggs, and I've water glassed them, right? So I've got eggs, but so these are real conversations. We've talked about sourdough bread. It's over $5 a loaf of bread here in Duluth, right? So yeah, so we've talked about pan frying breads. So this is so Blake, not sorry to interrupt, but I'm just trying to illustrate. This is a very serious conversation in my world, right? With me and you right now, right? Mm-hmm. These are serious conversations.
It has to. It comes back from that adopting of the Great Depression mindset. It's where can we save some capital? Where can we stretch what we have? What can we make? I mean, as goofy as it is, because we got a whole ton of tomatillos right now. We were looking up things you can do with tomatillos, and there was this one lady that's like, you can make an apple pie, but just instead of apples, you use tomatillos. They taste really similar if you keep your eyes closed. And I was like, oh man, that's some Depression era shit right there. But anyway, I think there's a metric that it's when like 30 or 40% of your weekly income goes to feeding your family. I think that's an international metric that's used that basically states you're right on the verge of like armed civil riots, violence in the street, because it's taken too much of what you have to be able to feed yourselves. And I don't know if we're that far off in a lot of ways, at least from the perspective of how a Westerner would feed themselves. I mean, obviously all of us can really tighten up the belt and just beans and rice and make our own tortillas, and that's still pretty cheap, but man, I don't know about you, but that's a tough diet to eat day in and day out. So
of a 15-year-old and an 11-year-old, I think more than 40% of my decent income goes to feeding the family.
Right.
Probably that and shoes, clothing and food. Yeah. Probably for you. Yeah.
Sports equipment. Oh my Lord. This gym I'm sitting out in front of.
But going, I guess. Go ahead. No, go ahead.
I was going to say another thing that I think helps people wake up where, it's not necessarily the price of food. It's when another aspect of when the war hits the doorstep is when your children are in school and they're starting to get some of the BS that the teachers are either mandated to pushing out of their own ideology or whatever else is happening on the playground. I found that parents send their kids to school and their kids are little ideologues also. And so you start to see it on that front also. And kind of where my wife and I fall is we educate our boys. We talk to them about our values. We talk to them about how things we would like to see done in our schools and our society. They understand where we're at, understand what we believe. And we just need to do a better job raising our children to be more confident in their own values. So when they go to schools, they could be like, that's bullshit. This isn't bullshit. They could understand and recognize and identify when things aren't making sense to them. And it works even for younger kids. I'm finding even my youngest kid is able to call BS on some stuff, so.
Well, but again, before we come over to you, Blake, just real quickly, because I just saw, this is so interesting. You brought that up, DB, but that's you, right? That's your family. And I'm sure that's the same with others, but I just saw some social media and this was, like in somebody else's podcast, this guy out there talking about how the school has his kid for the majority of the time. So therefore the school is the real parent and he just has got to shut talk about a beta, just total. But so you see what I'm saying? But David, a lot of people are giving in and going along with that because raising children is hard or being a parent is hard. And I don't want to do that. So I'll just let the government take care of it. Sorry. Just had to throw that in
And
there.
but this is also where again, and I understand the world I get to live in, how fortunate I am. My kids were in a school that we did not believe in. We moved them. We changed schools. We put them in schools where people shared our values, where people, like from the teachers to the other parents of their peer group to their coaches, all share our values to one level or another. And it becomes our own community. And I get it. It's a privileged position to be in, but it's so important that we do not lose our children to those teachers, to those
Yeah.
institutions. And a little beside the point, my son's social studies teacher from last year, from his 8th grade class, is actually sitting right next to me in the car waiting for her son to get out of the gym too. Just that's how small a town I'm from right now.
Gotta love
And
it.
she's not punching you or like mad at you for having this conversation?
Well, she's in her car waiting for her
Oh, I
kid to
thought
get
she
out
was
of the
like in the
gym.
passenger seat right next to you. I was
Oh
like,
no,
well, put her on, man. Put her on.
she's fantastic. I coach baseball with her husband. Like, they're good people, right? They're the people we want. They might not actually believe the same things I believe, but they're raising their kids the way that we should be raising kids, and they're fantastic people.
And
Well,
that's the thing. I
and
think
DB, you're just real quickly, Blake. DB's getting some good hands, some good props for doing the right thing and raising his kids, and I would agree with that, and that's what makes you, brother. Blake, go ahead, sir.
well, that's what I was just gonna say. Is I think that's why, in my opinion, and is the most potent weapon against a tyrannical state is to raise up the next generation as best as you can, because it creates these individuals who are capable of thinking and acting on their own and operating outside of the necessity of the government holding their hand for every little thing, and that's a huge threat to a power structure that wants to control and itemize every single aspect of your life. So I think that's one of the single greatest acts of rebellion you can possibly do, is have children and raise them to be, I guess, dickheads to the state. I mean, maybe not dickheads to the state, but you get what I'm saying.
No, it's a great way.
Another,
We are the rebels. We are the counter revolution. We are the rebels. I mean, not counter revolution, but Blake, DB, so many other people have heard me say this. I grew up and I had a respect, at least for the classical liberals. I used to respect, because they had a position, they could back it up. I didn't agree with all their arguments, but they could back it up. Those people are gone now. That is us, the conservatives. Like, no, if you want to do that, you can do that as an adult, but no, you don't get to take my tax dollars for that. And no, that's illegal. And then, and then kind of bringing it full circle. We're in the mess we're in right now because those type of idiots, those people we're talking about, have been running this country since kind of the second Bush administration. And here we are today, and you reap what you sow.
another thing that gives me optimism. Again, I read tea leaves. So when I see numbers that look good, I try and think, is this truly good or too good to be true? And boys, young men right now, I think teenagers are what they're measuring, are trending to be a lot more conservative than any generation previously for a long time. And I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that naturally we know what's masculine, right? Naturally we know what those qualities are. It's somewhere deep inside. And I think boys are going to lead the charge on saying, we need to get back to what these masculine qualities are. We want to go out and compete. We want to go out and be, aggressive and competitive and hit dudes on the football field. Like, they want to get back into that, or they want to be part of that world. They're fighting against a system. And I would truly love to believe those numbers are good, that they're going to lead us the right way. On the other side of that coin, unfortunately, females are trending to be a little bit more liberal than normal. But if we raise the future leaders right, our children, we could turn that tide there. And yeah, John's right. Boys have to be made to be men. I'm not raising boys. I'm raising men. That's how my wife and I look at what our responsibility is. We don't talk to them like little kids. We talk to them like they're young men, not necessarily adults, even though I'll chew one out from time to time. But You know, like we have to raise them to be the ones who take on the torch when we hand it past them.
Yeah, absolutely.
Blake, I don't know if we really want to go into the P. Diddy. We're at an hour and 10.
Yeah, and that's like an hour and 10 conversation.
Yeah.
Like I was saying.
Well, and I think this was such a good spot to kind of wrap it up right there. I mean, you know, because that is also kind of current events. I mean, like if you look at everything that's really going on right now, if you want to like point fingers, cast stones, a lot of the issues have to do with what we kind of just talked about. We've created a society where men aren't men. Again, a guy says it's okay for the government to tell his kid what his kid should believe in. That's where we are. Again, that's League of Shadows. That's the corruption of language. That's the dissolution of community. That's the dissolution of family. That's the dissolution of religion. And that, in my opinion, is still a big League of Shadows. And that's, some of the stuff taking place behind the scenes. And, back to one of the questions John asked is, well, what do we do to stand up against this? Well, I think DB and Blake just kind of nailed it right there. Got to raise our kids, man. We got to raise our kids right. And still no, I'm not raising my kid to be a this, that, or the other. I'm raising my kid to be a man. And as a man, he'll make his own decisions and he'll make some right ones and he'll make some wrong ones. But because he's a man, he'll know the difference once he makes those mistakes and he'll learn from it and he'll be a better person as a result of it. Mm-hmm. That's what I think.
No, I like it. It's absolutely the truth. So, and that's really the biggest foundation of a good community is the people that are willing to help build it and stand up and be men and women. So,
DB, why don't you take us out? I think, Blake, well, you can do the final comment, but let's have DB take us out on a good comment here. And, unless you guys want to start talking about Diddy. But,
no, I got to get going here pretty quick. Actually, I got to go get my little one. So,
all right.
Honestly, I'm obviously a true believer that our boys have to become the men who are going to lead in the future, and that's why it's been a mission of my life after the agency. Is like when I started Reno Dads and a lot of the activities I do, I'm very involved in coaching and sports and all the community areas around where I'm around all the young men in our area all the time. They all know who I am. I just walked into the frozen yogurt shop. Sorry, got to say goodbye to the teacher. I walked into the yogurt and now I got to say goodbye to the coach. Yeah. Small town, man. But I'm at Frozen Yogurt, which is right by the ball fields, and two kids wearing literally this hat show up. And I didn't know who they were. They're a bit older than my boys, but they know who I am, right? They know that I'm one of the coaches down there. I'm that involved with these kids' lives. And we need more men to step into that role where I'm seeing a lot of men are shirking that responsibility, whether they know sports or not. Maybe that's it. But dudes who know sports, who know baseball, who know football, when they're not stepping up, it's a loss for all of us, right? Then when they can help raise these men as well. And I wrote an article, God, years ago now. It was, don't let me be your kid's role model and your hero. Don't let him look up to me. He should be looking up to you. And if you do your job right, I'll just be his coach and you'll still be his dad, that his hero, right? And I started to see coaches were becoming the heroes, and we don't want that. We want the dads to step up into these roles and lead their families the way they should be.
Amen. Blake, that was pretty. You better put that in your hip pocket, Blake. You're a new dad.
Yeah, no kidding.
Heck yeah.
Oh, loving every minute of it too. He's cutting his first tooth right now, and oh boy.
Have fun with that.
Yeah.
Speaking of, that's my little one.
Hey, bud.
What up there, little man?
Have a good day. Good day at the gym? Yeah. All right.
Hey, by the way, I don't know if he knows it, but he is internet famous for him and his brother just absolutely crushing it. I mean, seriously, just crushing it.
Follow on Twitter. So Twitter is like basically the big sports recruitment thing that you could do for getting into college. And I have to send my kids away from California in Reno, right, to get them out of these terrible environments. I have to send them back east or the south. And the only way I could do that economically is to make sure they have a good Twitter following or X following, right? So that's where all the coaches are. That's where you send your highlight reels and start communicating with coaches. So I've been big on helping my older son get in through that. So hopefully they get internet famous and get a scholarship and get to go to a good school somewhere that's conservative and not that shit insane in California.
Hey, just real quickly, a plug for you. So again, Reno dads, we've talked about it many times. Just type in Reno, like the city. That's what it is. Reno dads. You'll see something that David's really active in. And then, but DB, I don't know if I know you, or I think I follow you on Twitter, but I never see you. I do see you on Instagram, and I'm here to tell you, his kids are crushing it. I mean, you like, it's fun stuff. I don't care about professional football. I'd rather just watch DB's kids out there fucking crushing it, plain and simple.
I will miss college game day all day long to go watch my boys play. It is so much fun because I get to see the hard work they put in, the effort they put in. We just spent an hour at the football field today where my youngest son could practice kicking, and my oldest son, I'm hitting him ground balls on the track, right? Like, I see them putting in the work. I see the results. They see the effort. They see the results, and it's freaking awesome.
Well, and
so
your
cool.
highlight reels over on Instagram, like if anyone doubts it, kind of there it is. I mean, like, no, that was a freaking solid hit, and that was like, like that's some pretty serious shit right there. So just a plug there for you, man. So
awesome. Well, I appreciate it, John. I appreciate you, Blake, Mark, brothers. Always a pleasure.
Have a great night.
Hey, all right. One of these days, Capitalist Caliphate, we got to make those t-shirts. Hey, I'm learning how to make hoodies. Maybe I'm going to have to do that seriously, stay tuned. We're going to do that as a design. We're doing it. The Tarbouche Brothers pizza. I might as fuck it. I might as well. I'm doing that, man.
We got to do it. I'm all in.
You got it.
All right, later,
DB,
guys.
You guys have a good one. Say hi to everybody, and thank you very much, sir. We'll see you next time.
Later, brothers.
All right, Blake.
Man, honestly, after
let's start talking Diddy. Let's start.
I was just gonna say, yeah, as far as everything goes, dude. I mean, talking about building the family, raising that next generation. I mean, you can't really say it much better. I think it's really the cornerstone of the future. It always has been. So I just say, like normal, is do your best, keep moving forward every day as best as you can, and keep your eyes out. Things are going to get hairy. So, all
right, we got one comment coming in here. Well, we had a bunch of comments. I've been putting them up, but hey, for next week, then, knock on wood, there won't be. There's some things I wanted to talk about tonight we didn't do.
Like the Trump assassination attempt, apparently.
Well, but that's actually turning out to be
a hoax, probably.
Well,
or not.
See, that's what I'm getting at. All the other things. Hey, but at the end of the day, if you can just create confusion, you're like Otto Skorzeni's little Nazi, commandos at the Battle of the Bulge changing around road signs.
Yep.
Dude, don't just think this is like, one sheriff or one, police department fucked up. Dude, there could be and there are so many other things going on, to include Diddy, as John the Accessorizer is bringing up. So maybe we do that next week, talk a little bit about Diddy, because, I still would love to sit and talk more about Jeffrey Epstein, because he didn't kill himself. We all know that. That's bullshit. Maybe the California fires, the, Hawaii fires, the Helene. I mean, there's, and the attempted assassinations. Has anyone talked about the bomb? The police were saying in New York, they had a vehicle laden with explosives, and then that just disappeared. Everybody's like, "Oh, that's just hyperbole, and that's conspiracy theory." But where's the story? Where's the story? Like, at least this story has no, he never said that, and the sheriff exaggerated, and he didn't have, So that's what I found out. So I was talking to somebody earlier, and you did my last comment. So in my previous life in the agency, I mean, I'm not going to go into too many details here. There's things I can say and some things I'm not sure of. But as you can imagine, I was a clandestine officer, so of course I operated an alias, and I'm not going to bore anybody. There's all kinds of different ways you can do aliases, but when you want to do an alias with backstopping, like something that passes scrutiny, there's a lot of effort that goes into that. So the initial reports where this guy had multiple passports, multiple IDs, the individual I was talking to today is also very familiar with these subjects and we were going over this in detail, like what would that mean? How does this work out? And, you know, can you do this by yourself? And if you could, and if you tried, how would you go about it? So we talked about that. So Blake, maybe we want to bring that up next week a little bit to some extent. I'm not 100% sure.
Well, and I mean, that stuff's all kind of interesting and useful to talk about. I'm all about it. I would say though, next week, you know, because it does play part of the current events, and I'll just do a little primer on it. But the Diddy situation is probably one of the most important political scandals that's taken place in a long time, because we're starting to hear some whispers of some of the party members that were there, and nothing confirmed yet, but there's supposedly some pretty big names involved in this. And it follows a formula that we've seen unfolding time and time again throughout history. So I would say it's a pretty big story. It goes into like Mark Your League of Shadows sort of thing. But it's an important one. So yeah, I'd say let's talk about that a little bit, and then we'll just kind of see where it goes next week and what happens in a week, because a lot can change, because it did last week too, and just kind of keeps happening every week. It's just like, tune in this week to Earth, the dumpster fire.
We didn't even talk about current events tonight. China is conducting drills around interdiction drills.
Russia.
They're doing drills around Taiwan, drills designed to help the Chinese maritime forces interdict any supplies coming into Taiwan via the maritime, right? You know, like
probably the third front opening.
We didn't talk about Israel. We didn't talk about Iran. We didn't even talk about all of these other. See, that's just it. And I would argue League of Shadows. It's by design. You can't even keep up with this stuff. No one's even talking about Diddy, except John brought it up tonight. You know, like no one's even remembering that. Oh, that's right. P. Diddy, sex parties, tapes, Epstein, minors.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. I don't really have much else than that. I guess just we'll see you next week. Hopefully the fire is not quite as big.
Dumpster fire. That's it. All right, boys and girls. Thanks for watching. If you're watching with live, and seriously, thanks for everybody here. Actually, John JD is saying, because I do have to talk about something else. He's like, let's talk. I'll get a beer. Ha ha ha. So yeah, that maybe, you know, I've got work still to do, John, but that does sound pretty good right now. Hey, but on that note, everybody, thanks for watching live. Thanks for everybody who does watch live. The comments, it makes it tons of fun. It makes it very interactive. That's what we're doing. Again, just bear with us. We're just going to ride this out to the election, and then we'll make a decision on how we're going to pivot after the election, whether we're going to start talking more the hands-on and the training and things like that. But right now it's just at that. It's at the, you know, it's almost at the fulcrum. It's either, you know, and that's why we titled it Hands Inside the Ride. It's almost all we can do right now. If you're not prepared, well, you can still try, but you know, not saying give up. You know, you got 2 weeks. There's still a lot of things you could do, but you're not going to learn how to, like, you know, do some pretty high end shit. You know, I don't know. Maybe you can. I don't know. I shouldn't be negative.
I've been saying is just every day, keep moving forward as best as you can. Learn a little something new.
Yeah.
Improve your situation a little bit. Organize something a little bit. Take tally of something. I mean, just do something every day. And eventually that stuff starts to pile up in the right direction instead of the wrong direction. So
as long as we don't die in a nuclear fireball in the next couple of weeks.
You know what? And if we die in a nuclear fireball, I guess we'll see you on the other side. So.
No. I was hoping you'd C.S. Lewis that shit.
Oh, yeah. May it find us breaking bread.
Yep. So. May it find us in a pub, having a beer, smoking a cigar, throwing some darts, breaking some bread.
Yeah.
That's a good way to end it right there, Blake. Take us out.
God bless everyone. That's all I got. You guys have a good week, and we'll see you next Monday.
Yep. All right, everybody. Be good. Reach out if you got questions, comments. We'll see you next week. All right, everybody.